please welcome to the stage the fantastic Tristram.
Good evening. My name is Tristram. I'm a scientist. I'm an activist, and my partner is not. My partner is an artist. He's a photographer, and I'm not. He's tall and handsome, and so am I. I'm an ecologist who is particularly interested in animal behaviour, and especially in the smells that animals use to communicate. You could say that I study armpits and worse across the animal kingdom. But I don't take my work home because I like my husband freshly washed. Neither of us is like Napoleon. And you may know Napoleon's famous letter to Empress Josephine. Don't wash, I'm coming home. He really loved his smells. Now, these smells that animals use to communicate are called pheromones. And I've written an award-winning book all about pheromones and animal behaviour. And professionally, it's the thing that has given me the most pleasure of all. So you can imagine, back in 2018, I was really looking forward to writing the 3rd edition. But when I got going, starting to update the book, I realised that most of the animals whose fabulous pheromone stories I will be telling in the book will be extinct in the lifetimes of my student readers. So, it was going to be sad. As coral reefs go, well, that's chapter 4. Frogs are going the same way, and they were big in chapter 5. The bad news is we might be left only with cockroaches and bedbugs. But there is some good news, which is they all have good pheromones. But by 2040, the book is going to be half the size. And as a 21st century ecologist, we spend a lot of our time writing obituaries, basically for all the animals that are disappearing. And you know the kind of thing. Sam the shark was happy in the community. He had a wicked sense of humour and a toothy grin. He'll be sadly missed. Selina the sloth was slow and measured right to the end. Sadly, her whole natural habitat was cut down. Paul, the predictive octopus, was famous. He had an arm for every friend in need. But to save Paul, Selina, and Sam, I had to do something. I became an activist, because surely it's better to save all the animals rather than simply editing them out of the book. So before I knew it, I was putting on my lab coat. Actually, it really is better if you practice this. Thank you. So I found myself in actions with other scientists who, like me, were concerned about climate change and habitat destruction. We actually mostly work with data now, not microbes, so we all had to go out and get this trademark lab coat. But having got one, we had a uniform. And it's partly symbolic. It tells people that we're scientists, and if we forget, we have a label. But it's very important that the general public know that scientists are so concerned that we feel we must protest too. So before I knew it, I was outside Rupert Murdoch's headquarters in London. It's where the Sun a tabloid newspaper is housed, you can think of it as the empire of evil. And if you're a Star Wars fan, you can think of it as the Death Star. And I'm not very good at heavy breathing, but imagine that at its heart. And I've always fancied myself as one of the heroes in Star Wars. I've always thought of myself as a young Luke Skywalker with a lightsaber of climate truth. Shroom, shroom, I would go to the climate denial. And one of the things about the right-wing press, the newspapers like The Sun and the Daily Mail, is that they love to denigrate and delegitimize climate protesters like me. If we're not eco-yobs, we're eco-zealots. They're always looking to kill the messenger. They've even claimed that we get paid, which will be fabulous, but it hasn't happened yet. And their stock in trade is bigging up the morals of Love Island if they're not talking about the latest scandal in soap operas. And all the while, they're doing climate denial. And sometimes it's almost worse than climate denial. They just pretend it's not happening or hide it away. So you'll know this week we've had the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, delivering its most severe and devastating predictions. And the Daily Mail, to its credit, at least got the title, the headline, right. Climate catastrophe is imminent, says UN. And then they messed it up because they put it at the bottom of page 19, 2 inches high, below 12 inches, about 2 pensioners fighting over a parking space in Dorset. So we have a problem. I'm in front of Murdoch Towers, the Death Star, in my lab coat, holding a placard saying nicely, David Attenborough says we must keep the Earth alive. And I'm thinking, David Attenborough is a national treasure. But I'm feeling nervous because up in the tower, there's a tabloid editor who probably thinks I'm a wet dream. And that's a nasty thought. In the eyes of a tabloid editor, I'm almost a walking caricature of an activist scientist. I'm white, I'm middle class, and my name is Tristram. So the tabloid editor would also mock my life of hardship, from being a student at Cambridge to coming to Oxford to be a professor for 20 years. But I've not always had the moral high ground. 3 years ago, if you'd offered me a keynote speech on pheromones in Japan, a place I love, I'd have been on the first flight to Tokyo faster than you can say fossil fuel to the smell of kerosene. But if we're talking about ecology, then my natural habitat really must be Waitrose. A supermarket so posh that King Charles sells his biscuits there. I'm not as posh as Charles, but I am part of the 1%. When my partner and I had homes in London and in Oxford, I'll never forget the moment when we were in a London Waitrose and he shouted out across the crowded store, Tristram, do we have toasted sesame oil in Oxford? And not one, but 3 Tristrams turned round. But what's the good of privilege if you don't do something good with it? So I've joined the scientists. We love wearing these lab coats. We're out in action. And if we're going to save Paul, Selina and Sam and ourselves and the planet for all of us, we need to get down to it. So do join us. Thank you very much and good night.